So I gave my commentary on this in another video. I've been bringing it up. Um, but they had a Temple graduate who was shot and killed during an armed robbery walking his dog. All right. This is in Philadelphia. And the whole situation is tragic. Oftentimes when this happens, though, I have mixed feelings because I see the bigger picture of what always happens. It was the same thing that happened, 2, 3 years ago? Almost identical situation, except this one, the guy, it was a white guy, and it was on the opposite side of Spring Garden, away from Center City, like the north side of Spring Garden. And he, I think he had like an Audi truck, and they were trying to, two teenagers tried to rob him, and he had his daughter in the back seat, and so he, I guess, fought with them, and they ended up, whoever was the shooter shot him in the head. Okay, I think he was a lawyer, if I'm not mistaken, just married, recently had, his child and everything, and got blown away. And I could imagine all of the nigga shit that their whole family is saying, all family and friends, and oh, the blacks are just like that. And it's like there's no common sense or logic like with white people in comment sections. Just absolutely none. So the teenagers that shot, this man during this armed robbery, this Temple student or Temple graduate, they were recently, caught. And what you're typically going to see on YouTube is the same old tired shit, right? The language is different, the energy is different because the perpetrators are black. It's always something about animals and hang 'em high, and I mean, you would think it was like the 30s in the South or something, right? And that's what the comment section, is filled with, right? I get the whole, pray for the family, justice, we want justice, but it's like white people, every time this happens, they always act like they can't comprehend or fathom like where or how this shit comes from, right? And one person left a comment. I'm assuming they're black because I saw some other comments that were there. And he said, or might be a she, I don't know. Let me back up okay. They said, crime of opportunity with a likely racial influence. When neighborhoods are gentrified, the criminals who were already living there think the newcomers must be well off because low-level criminals aren't deep thinkers. They are familiar with brands and things that look like wealth. They made assumptions, acted rashly, and killed someone. They deserve life in prison, but it wasn't a hate crime. And the reason I'm bringing up it being a hate crime, because it's like, I swear, white people all over the internet, they want to be victims so bad, like so bad, right? Like they know like there's really no justifiable, reason for what happened with slavery and Jim Crow and, all that stuff, right? So they know that they can't come up with a reason, an economic justification. So what they want to do is two things. They want to act like they're now victims, right? Because you got black people who are disproportionately poor, and therefore they're in situations of desperation and social dysfunction, which comes out of poverty, and they're going to commit more crimes. And so because you have that imbalance in society, white people are going to be like, we're the victims. Who look at who commits the crime. Like, this is their logic. This is their shit ass fucking logic, right? And the other thing that they want to do is they want to equalize the burden, right? So yeah, y'all black people, you had slavery, and us white people have to deal with, your crime today, right? That's their logic. That's that. So even, let's just call it even Steven, and forget about reparations for slavery, and forget about, rectifying the federal government facilitating wealth inequality in America through housing discrimination. Now, forget about all that, right? Even Steven, y'all commit crimes against us, and our ancestors committed crimes against y'all. Even Steve, right? That's their logic. Like I said in the comment section, they're foaming at the mouth, all this animal stuff. I never see the same type of energy, when it comes to the white people committing crimes. This is all type of, if you got like, certain news apps that just like, just show you the worst of American society. You see the like child trafficking, molestation, domestic violence, murder, murder suicides. White males love murder suicides. It's like, bitch, if I can't have you, nobody will, right? Like white guys love that one, right? They kill her, then they kill the kid, and then they kill themselves. Well, that's like white guys' like favorite pastime, right? But you don't see like any of this vitriol that you see when black people commit crimes against white people. It's like what white people are doing, and there's plenty of white people who do it. They run around the internet, scour the internet looking for bias confirmation. They're like, see, I told you those niggers are no good. Right? This is what they do. And the point that the person made, and I said the same thing. I've been saying the same thing, and I said the same thing the last time they had a shooting like this. Philadelphia has gone through quite the transformation. Truth be told, I barely recognize it sometimes. You know what I mean? Because COVID, has really kept me away from Center City, Philadelphia, and just moving around like the way that I was before. You kind of get in and you get out, right? But, a lot of stuff is before COVID hit, there was in a lot of cities, there was some, I don't want to call it a boom, but people are moving back to the city. Old factories being turned into like these like bougie apartments, and they're like, oh my God, exposed brick, and oh my God, look at the tinders, right? That's white people, they love that shit, right? It's so rustic, right? And, so there was a lot of that going on. And like, this is the part that blows my mind. And it has to be like some level of white entitlement. And this is why I have mixed feelings about the whole situation, and even just like where black people are and slavery and everything. And I know it's not the politically correct thing to say, right? But it's like, white people, they create these situations of wealth inequality, right? Then like, okay, so you had, the integration, right? Or let's call it desegregation. Then white people were like, we don't want to be around black people. We want to, the property values will go down, all that stuff, white flight, right? And so like they left, right? Because most of the inner cities, that's where white people lived. If you look at old pictures of, Philadelphia, Camden, like all those row homes, they were built at the beginning of the 20th century or the end of the 19th century. And that's where white people were living. These were not where black people were living. Black people were living like often like shanty towns and shacks and shit. They were living in like the worst, horrendous, conditions. And then when, after World War II, and you had the Federal Housing Commission or the Federal Housing Association, I don't know what it is, but I know it's called FHA loans. So I'm assuming association. And the government gave people like, what's his name? John Levitt. Is it John Levitt? Or is his first name something else? Anyway, they gave people like him and land developers massive amounts of federal funding, which are taxpayer dollars, which basically created the middle class through, home equity, right? Buy the house for $10,000, live in it for 30 years, pass the house on to your children, or take equity out of the home, start a small business, right? And that house, in 30 years is worth $300,000, right? And so, that's how, a lot of them white middle class got, their head start. And now you have, everybody wants to be in the hub, or at least before COVID they did. And so now they're just moving into the inner city, right? And I talked about how this happens. They increased the rent for the slumlords that, were renting to black tenants. They increased the rent to try to get them out of there and then give it to some land developer. They come through and they claim eminent domain. Oh, this is a blighted area. We're just, basically it's the code word for urban renewal, the new version of urban renewal, right? We're gonna go and demolish all this, buy up these row homes, and build luxury apartments, right? And then you have the black people who live, in a particular location. Let's say they actually own the property. What ends up happening is that because all of the luxury apartments and land development that's going on around them, right, they raise the property taxes on them, and they can't afford to pay the property taxes. All of a sudden, that row home that they bought for $90,000 is now worth 1.2 million, or 500,000 or whatever, right? Because of where it's located. Oh, they're in downtown Philadelphia, right? Ask people about the Gayborhood in Philadelphia. That shit was Skid Row before it was the Gayborhood. That's where all the addicts and the druggies and everybody else was, the homeless people. That's where they were all hanging out. Now they've all moved up and around, Badlands and Kensington, because, that's where the, America's #1 open air heroin market is. And the funny thing is that's all, white suburban kids, who got hooked on, mom's Percocet, and then they switched over to, fentanyl, and, that's where they're trying to get a fix. Remember, I told you there was a white guy. He was, I'm not going to say what he did, but I mean, we argued about race, and he was telling me all this bullshit about personal responsibility and black people this and that and the third. Man, that motherfucker died in Kensington in a car with a needle in his arm when they found him. Obviously he died of what do you call that shit? I'm going blank. Respiratory depression, right? Because that's what morphine, not morphine, but that's what opioids do. That's what heroin does, right? So, he died, and it's like, and this is the same white guy sitting there telling me about personal responsibility. I mean, it is the damnedest thing, But, you have all this that goes on. These white people, they come and they show up, and, some of them are just ignorant. Some of them, they, oh my God, this is so nice. I always want to live in center city or downtown Philadelphia or whatever. And they show up. The land developers don't tell them, oh, it's an up and coming area, da 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 da. They don't tell them that shit backs right up against the hood. Just like this person said in the comment section, like the criminal element, the people that, in other words, the people who have been living there when the place was undesirable are still living there in poverty with all of their issues and social dysfunction brought about by poverty. And then these white people, they just show up and they're just walking around all, la-di-da, la-la-la-la, you know what I mean? Just fucking clueless. Walking around at night, You know what I mean? I've seen them. You should see the white girls that love to, it's 10:30 at night. Oh, let me go on a jog with my earbuds on. You know what I mean? Just stupid shit. And you know what really irritates me about all this? If it was me, nobody would give a shit. If I went out there and I got shot, white people would be like, black on black crime. Niggas killing niggas. That's all white people would say. They would not give a flying fuck. But, oh my God, 2 black teens killed a white man. Oh my God, see, we're victims. Oh, it's okay to be white. That's what white people do. And it's everywhere, all over the internet, especially on YouTube. Especially on YouTube. And I'm not asking the YouTube gods to run around and start censoring people and all this other shit. You know what I mean? If anything, to me, it's bias confirmation that white people are fucked up. Like the way they process information is fucked up. I'm like, you don't see the white privilege. Like you don't see the legacies of systemic inequality. It's a crime of opportunity. As the person said, in that comment. It's an economic crime. I've seen people saying, they attacked him because he was white. It was a hate crime. And the irony is, maybe it was because he was white, but not only because he was white. In other words, we live in a society, and see, white people, they love to do this. Oh, black people are poor, black people are this, black people don't have nothing. Go back to your ghetto, right? How many times with a white person, they get really mad at a black person and they're in the bar or something? Go back to the ghetto, right? They say that like they're saying something, right? So the opposite, the idea is that white people have wealth. White people run around and showcase their opulence and whatnot, and somehow they think that poor people aren't getting the cues that white people tend to have more money than black people. Right? Like like to all the white people who are listening to this, if you were a white criminal, right? And you said, I'm going to rob somebody. Who would you rob? Would you rob a white person or a black person? Who do you think, if you're risking, freedom, and you're risking, possibly getting, shot by police, right? Who are you you're trying to get the biggest score. Who are you going to rob? Black people who are the face of poverty, or white people who, hey, he might have a Rolex or a Breitling, or, he might have a couple dollars in his pocket. Now, I don't know who goes and decides to go walk their dog and have $200 in their pocket. But again, see, black people already have this sort of double consciousness, just being aware and shit like that. We know that there's savages out there. We know that there's people that are in desperate situation. On top of that, it's the middle of COVID. People are out of work, unemployed, underemployed. I talked about this in my other video about, you got these kids, they go out there, they got the mask hanging out underneath their nose, breathing up all the COVID. Then they go back home to grandma, right? Because they're staying with grandma because mom was a drug addict, or, or dad's in jail. And then they coughing all up on grandma or grandpa, whichever grandparent they're living with. What happens if they die? We gonna go into foster care? You see, and I'm repeating myself, but I'm just saying, it's like these are the type of lies that people are living. And the whole aspect of, what they need is they need the Lord and the sweet twinkle of Christ. The sweet twinkle of Christ does not fill an empty belly. And I like what the person said, anything can happen if you're going to try to do, an armed robbery like that. What if the person had a gun? It's Pennsylvania. People can carry in Pennsylvania. So it's like they didn't even think what if they had a gun as well? Just like that teenager that tried to rob somebody at a gas station in Houston, and the guy was a CCW holder and blew him away. He was 14 years old. Not thinking. But that's what you're dealing with. But you always get these, these white people That's like they're entitled to, well, I should be able to walk around and go wherever I want to go. And but like the stupid thing is, if you said, oh, here's a ghetto over here, why don't you go over there and drive through it and hang out over there and whatnot? They would say, I'm not hanging out over there. Why not? It's the ghetto. It's dangerous. But yet, if a pocket of an area gets gentrified, right? A pocket. And everything that surrounds it is the ghetto. Somehow they're like, well, I'm safe because the people in this neighborhood have money. I mean, I don't know how clueless some of these white folks are. And I already told you that when it comes to gentrification, they don't send in the the white oligarchic, if that's a word, patriarchal males. They don't move. They're not the first wave. The first wave are your artisans, your hipsters, your students, what I mean? Your young people that, oh my God, I'm just in the city. They're not even thinking about their surroundings. Right? They're thinking about living that young life and not having to be with their parents anymore. And, they're just, they're clueless. They don't have double consciousness. And then it's either white people have no double consciousness, or they only have racist consciousness, where like every time they see a minority, they're like, oh, they're out to get us, right? Which I guess, that would have perhaps protected this guy, but if that's what he thought, he wouldn't have been walking around at nighttime trying to walk his dog. I'm not trying to put it on him, but I'm just saying, it's like, when black people hear these kind of stories, they're like, yo, that's unfortunate. That shit happens to other black people all the time and nobody gives a shit. But real talk, I wouldn't have been walking my dog, at nighttime. Plain and simple. That's not the time to walk your dog. It's not the time to jog. I literally, I was in a car and with a chick and a black woman, as a matter of fact, and we saw this woman. It was already nighttime, right? Because it gets dark now, in the Northeast, at like what, 5 o'clock or something like that. So it was maybe like 6, and she was just running in the dark. It's like, baby girl, what you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And not only that, not only was she walking in the dark or running in the dark, jogging in the dark, she was jogging away from population centers. Like where we were coming from, where we were coming from, it was like that. It was like less busy, and where we were going, it was more busy. And I'm like, why aren't you running the other way, or why don't you run around in circles where it's well lit? Like, I can't tell white people nothing. They got their own entitlement. Oh well, just don't steal and rob. I'm like, just completely ignoring, the human psyche and how people get when they're in desperate situations and whatnot. Kids who I keep asking the question. I'm like, show me the upper middle class black kids that are committing drive-bys. Show me the upper middle class black kids that are committing armed robberies. Show me the middle class black kids that grew up like, this gentleman that got killed. Show me the ones that grow up like that are out here committing crimes. They're not. And white society they just keep kicking the can down the road. They keep wanting to ignore it. And I'm like, but you're going to move right next to it. So let me get this right. So you're going to move right next to the problem and not solve the problem, but act like you can't get touched by the problem. That's the part that blows my mind. Not that I'm blaming this man for getting killed. I remember one time I was leaving a club in Philly, and I parked in the parking garage, right over there on 15th and Vine. There's a parking garage over there. And And, I had to walk, pretty much, a couple blocks or whatever. And these two guys, they were following me. And I basically, I hit the corner, like I started going around in a circle. I hit the corner, and then I hit another corner. They were still following me. And then when I hit the third corner, like I made it like around the corner right as they came around the corner. I was gone. I was gone. When they came around that corner, they didn't know where I was. But I was walking real, not slow, but just like making them think that was my pace, making them think that if they kept their pace that they would be able to catch up. As soon as I hit that corner, I was out. And that was my, situation with, I would call it a near miss. And, I had another situation that I'm not going to talk about, but that was one of the situations where I decided, I was like, nah, fuck that. I'm strapping up. And, cause the first gun I had was like a rite of passage. Like when I turned 21, I was determined to, purchase a firearm. And then after that, I was like, nah, I need something smaller, need something more concealable, and then started thinking about, guns in a more like practical application. But again, here you have a situation. Hey, I wish that guy that got killed, I wish he had a firearm to protect himself. I don't really care that those, two teenagers are black. I'm like, hey, you out there trying to rob people, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, right? Oh, I forgot, white people, they tossed that out since, Ashley Babbitt got shot in the neck by the Capitol police officer that was protecting the Congress people, right? Because, we get to change the rules when it's convenient for you, right? We get to change the sayings when it doesn't fit your narrative, right? But anyway, I'm saying, they should have been, he should have been able to protect himself. And yet and still, here we have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris about to come through. Oh, we need gun control. We need to protect gun control. You tell me how some teenagers are getting guns in the first place anyway. You see what I'm saying? Now, I don't know who this, scrupulous people are. Right? Is it scrupulous or unscrupulous? I always mess those up. I gotta look that up. But anyway, you got some people out here that, however those, if a teenager has a gun, they got it from an adult or they stole it from an adult, an irresponsible adult. I don't see how gun laws are gonna stop that. Because if people have access to guns, unfortunately, you're gonna have situations where people who shouldn't have them do, or are able to acquire them. I know we need to lock them up and all this other shit. Then that makes it not useful. Because if somebody, let's say you locked your guns up and somebody broke into your house in the middle of the night, and you don't have a fast enough way to unlock it. Because a lot of people are real lazy with their firearms. They don't even know what gun to buy. Then they go and then they get a key lock. Where's my keys? Where's my keys? Where's my keys? I gotta get the gun. Wait, hold on, criminal. Can you wait until I get my firearm out before you accost me? Like, don't. It's not how it works. You try to get one of those hand key locks, or not the hand ones, the hand signature one. Usually they're like $250, something like that. It's well worth it. Or you could just go and get, one of those Walmart pad key locks and use that. That's another effective way of doing it, or affordable way of doing it. But I'm just saying, the ability. The one thing I don't like about the Democrats is they sympathize with the criminal. And again, that's something else that I have mixed feelings on. That's like my biggest fear, and I talked about this in another video that I did not post. My biggest fear is, having to shoot a black man, going into a bodega, looks like a shady, bodega store or corner store or whatever. I don't even go into those just to avoid the situation. I don't want to be in there standing in line and then somebody, tries to rob the place, and then, I gotta shoot them. And I'm understanding that chances are they're robbing the place because they're in a desperate situation. Like, not everybody is a monster. I talked about this in another video. I don't know if you've seen the video where the guy, he stole some lady's car at a gas station and then realized it was a baby in the back seat and then brought the baby to another gas station and dropped the baby off and then took off with the car. Like, hey, I may be a thief. I may get charged with grand theft auto, but I am not cool with getting charged with kidnapping. I may be a criminal, but I'm not a monster. And so, you got folks out here, that are like that. And I just, I don't know if you remember this story of the guy, he, what did he rob? He robbed, I think it was a pharmacy or something like that. And he was like, and he gave him a letter and said, I'm sorry, I got to do this. My child is sick or something like that. And I believe the only thing, the medications that he took were, for a child. But it's COVID. It's a pandemic. People are not in work. So many people have been laid off. You're going to see shit like this. You're going to see shit like this, especially with the way that black people, they're already in poverty. And then the little bullshit job that they were working, you take that away. You know what I'm saying? Freaking survival does not wait for acceptance, or survival does not wait for assimilation. It doesn't. And again, I just I look at white people sometimes and I'm like, they're like the way that they be, we're such victims and all this other shit. And I'm like, but you don't connect the dots. You don't get how this is a crime of opportunity, an economic crime, not a racially motivated hate crime. And you don't connect all the dots with how, we ended up with this sort of wealth disparity. No matter where you go in the world, this is what you see. You see this in Brazil with the favelas and, the way that you have this back and forth between the police slaughtering the people who live in the favelas. You see this in South Africa. Damn near half of active self-protection's videos are in South Africa. But we know why the black people are poor in South Africa, because they had freaking, apartheid for freaking, a century. Right? I mean, this is what you see in Latin America. It's always the guys on the moped. The guys on the moped. Whenever you see the guys on the moped come running up, you already know it's the problem. The moped banditos. And you look at the people that actually have, and it's like they never want to do anything to address this inequality and, wealth disparity. And they act like, they can't be touched. You see? And honestly, like that's the whole thing with even the gun control, and the Democrats and now the Republicans, who are probably going to be on board. I'm told you, power does not like to be challenged. They do not want people to have, tools, to challenge, their cushy lifestyle or, how they're living and how they're operating when you got a bunch of starving people around you. This is like what you see with the rappers, all these rappers that go out here and, it's like you got to move out of the hood, man. You can't be hanging around the hood. You got Nipsey Hussle hanging around the hood. We know what happened to him. You got what other rapper, that shouldn't be hanging around the hood? Damn near every Chicago rapper. They're always hanging around the hood, hanging around in there. It's like, man, you got money now. You a target. And that's another reason why it's so stupid for white people to say, oh, it's a hate crime. They bitch that black on black violence happens all the time. It's always black on black violence. But somehow when a black person commits a crime against them for the same reason they're committing it against a black person, which is because they think the black person has money, right? Because there's some, rapper or entertainer or somebody who is spending way too much time in the hood flossing, somehow they think that when that same motivation for that crime is committed against a white person, it's a hate crime. It makes absolutely no sense. On top of the fact that if black people are just, black people kill themselves, it's black on black crime. Why are you all screaming Black Lives Matter? Black lives clearly don't matter to you, but let a white person get hit all of a sudden. Hate crime. This is a hate crime. How come this is a hate crime? And not only that, it's like the other thing is, why do white people get hit with hate crimes all the time? Maybe because they explicitly state that it's a hate crime in their manifestos that they like to write so much, or on their postings online and Facebook, and talk about how, there's a race war and how they hate the blacks and all this other stuff. Did you ever consider that shit? And then to even go, further than that, white people have a track record of racial hate crimes against black people for no other reason than they're black. I mean, think about it like this. If white people disproportionately have all the wealth and black people are disproportionately poor, what other motivation do white people have to go in and fuck with the black people? Right? Are they going in and messing with black people? White people who have are going to mess with black people who don't have because they're trying to rob them? Why would you try to rob somebody who has less than you? Why would you see a similar crime of white people trying to rob a black person unless the black person has and the white person has less? You're not going to see, white people who have commit this type of crime of trying to rob somebody while they're walking their dog if the black people typically have less. You know what I'm saying? It's an apples to orange comparison. But yet white people, I've noticed this for just all being online and everything. They just constantly try to make these false equivalencies because they're trying to find some way out of their white guilt and justify their hatred and animosity towards black people. And in large part, it's because they're just mad because of how black people make them feel guilty about being white and being the beneficiaries of the transgressions of their ancestors. And so they have to find some type of way to say, we're not that bad. It's you guys that are really the bad guys. Right. Even though we've facilitated this whole system of inequality, that keeps black people in a perpetual state of stagnation and keeps white people, on top. Right. Not that all white people are on top, but when you go into major metropolitan areas and cities, the white people are doing substantially better than the black people. And the gap of white people doing substantially better than black people is way bigger. That's what's so crazy about all of this politics and Republican versus Democrat and everything else. The white people that are foaming at the mouth and espousing all this pro-Trump Republican shit, those are some of the most podunk, poor, dusty, have nothing in their bank account white people that you will ever see. And they got all type of inferiority complexes about being poor white people and at the bottom of the totem pole of the socioeconomic ladder within the white hierarchy. Oh, they got all type of issues with that. They're just as poor as black people are in the inner city. Just as poor. Right? But somehow when this goes down, you see the racial solidarity. Now all of a sudden they identify with white liberals, that white Yankees and city slickers, right? All of a sudden, now, they join for, see, we told you those blacks are savages and that's why you shouldn't bother with them and this, that, and the third. I just find that shit so comical, looking at it, right? When truth be told, the poor working class rural white folks should be joining forces and forming Voltron with the poor inner city black folks. But the name of the game, divide and conquer. But it just the shit is so tired. I mean, I've been online long enough to see this shit over and over again. And no matter how many times it's broken down, you will always get these white people that foam at the mouth in their irrational thinking and irrational behavior, and they just continue to perpetuate it and do it online. Not that I'm looking for any sort of intellectual integrity or honesty or philosophical consistency, because I'm most certainly know I'm not going to find that with most of white America. But it's like, if y'all going to, it's like, spare me this fake ass outrage. You know what I mean? With fake outrage over false equivalence. Like, that shit is so irritating. It's like, damn, why can't you come with something like real and substantial, as opposed to coming with just false equivalence or acting like you don't know why this is the way that it is. Anyway, that's pretty much all I gotta say. I just needed to get that off my chest, because I mean, it's just nuts listening to this stuff. I mean, I'll read the comment. This is from Dave the One, or Theon. And he says, hate crime, ... death penalty. And then the person that responded, Ben Tuta 5 or Tauta 5, he wrote, crime of opportunity with a likely racial influence. When neighborhoods are gentrified, the criminals who were already living there think the newcomers must be well off, because low-level criminals aren't deep thinkers. They are familiar with brands and things that look like wealth. They made assumptions, acted rashly, and killed someone. They deserve life in prison, but it wasn't a hate crime. And then there's another guy, and he wrote, I don't even know if I can find the comment. Let me see if I can find the comment. He wrote, where's this at? What is he saying? No. Where's this comment at? I gotta go back. Oh, man. I think I lost it. Yeah, I think I lost it. But anyway, oh no. Hold on. Is it still recording? Yes, it's still recording. Okay. So, let me see where I found this comment. Give me a second. Give me a second. Full of hate. And I'm reading this comment. Surprise, surprise. See, obviously that's a comment that has racial undertones. Oh, the person was black. Oh, surprise, surprise. Of course, it's not going to be a surprise when black people are disproportionately living in poverty. Like I said, if I want to see white social dysfunction, I'm going to go to Kensington. I'm going to go to Badlands. I'm going to go to where white people are disproportionately poor, and that's where I'm going to see teen pregnancy, and I'm going to see, domestic violence and abuse of fathers and all that other shit, because of the stresses of being in a situation like that. Here's another person, Mid-Atlantic 09, and he's responding to Dave Theon, and actually Mid-Atlantic 09 is not even, that's gender neutral. Like, what am I saying? It's a he. But anyway, responding, there's no facts to support hate crime enhancement. The parties being of different races isn't enough to fulfill the elements of hate crime. Hate crime enhancements don't add much value when a perpetrator is already being charged with a crime punishable by life in prison without parole or death. And see, this is the whole thing with the white people screaming they want it to be a hate crime because it's they want the symbolism of it. They want to say, see, we're not all bad. Black people do exactly the same thing to us that we do to them. And that's just not true. That's not the case. But like again, that's that whole, what is it called? It's not projection. What is it called? Maybe it is projection. But they really want to put onto us the label that has been put onto them. And they want to claim it's a classic childhood. They do it too. And I'm not saying that you can't find an incidents or cases where, a black person commits a hate crime, against a white person and says, I'm doing this because you're white and I hate white people. But even still, giving it context, not justifying it, but giving it context, you could understand why black people would be so angry at white people in America, given the historical context. You see, white people's hatred comes from their belief of their superiority of over black people. Now, I don't know how you derive hatred from feeling superior, but it's like what Malcolm X said. It really comes out of fear. Fear that black people will do unto white people as white people have done unto them. When black people, quote unquote, hate white people, it's because of what white people have collectively done against the black race. It's not the same. White people, racial superiority and fear of black retaliation. Black people, when it comes to hate, it's what white people collectively have done against black people. It's not even in the same room, but white people, oh my God, they just come online, foaming at the mouth, spewing nonsense, just nonsensical shit. And because so many other people parrot it, like people actually entertain this bullshit. It's just, let me see what other comments, because there's like 150 comments under here. Super predators. Hate crime is another hate crime comment. This is one of the most disgusting crimes I've seen, I've heard about in a while. It was completely senseless and pointless, waste of life. Dude had his whole life, future ahead of him, and it was thrown away for nothing. Not only his life, but his girlfriends and his families, because the pain will last a lifetime. And it's very true. Usual suspects indeed. Again, these are the same white people that don't have the same energy when you have, postings of black criminality. They're all over the internet. I'm trying to think of there's all type of news apps on the phone. And if you go and you look at your local news, there's all type of crimes that don't make the national news or don't even make the 5 o'clock news. There's all type of crimes that go on and you're like, damn, just random shit. It's just so random. You're like, wow, I can't believe this happened or went on, and you're not going to see anything. It's all about the news loves crimes that have to do with race, and they love crimes that have to do with big body counts and big casualty numbers, such as mass shootings. Again, here we go with the thugs. It's another thing. When I notice, whenever it's black guys committing crimes, they're thugs. Whenever it's white guys committing crimes, it's a bunch of punks. I had to show a white guy, the whole discrepancy. I was like, oh, look, I'll prove it to you. And I showed him it was a bunch of black kids in Chicago. It was either Chicago or Florida. I can't remember. They're far away from each other, right? I don't know why I'm saying it's between those two. But anyway, they were selling water on the freeway. And there was a video of them hopping on the running boards of a woman that was in a Jeep. And she had the window cracked. You can't tell what's going on, whether they're having a conversation, whatever, whether she's bullshit with them. You can't tell. Okay? But the white people foaming in the mouth, all type of, oh, black people are this, that, and third, da 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 da, right? But I don't know if y'all remember, you had the white kids that threw the rock over the overpass. It was like a rock. It was like a rock or a huge piece of snow, and it went through the windshield of a driver and killed him. And it was 5 teenage white kids, right? And they had to, stand trial and everything, and they were charged guilty, everything else like that, right? You go to the comment section there, none of the same energy. Oh, those teens, they were just joking around, So I just slap on the wrist, right? But they had all type of vitriol for these black kids that were hanging on the cars, trying to sell, water. I'm not saying that they should have been hanging on the cars. I'm not condoning any of that. I'm just saying the energy levels are way different. Let's continue. Let's see. Glad they caught them. So messed up. Death sentence, hate crime. Where else? BLM added again. What does BLM have to do with 2 black kids in poverty that decided that it was a bright idea to go out and rob somebody? What does Black Lives Matter have to do with that? I'm not even a fan of Black Lives Matter as an LGBT organization that it is, but I'm saying, what does Black Lives Matter have to do with that? Like, again, you see why I say I hate, like, Black Lives Matter should be sued for using the phraseology or the name or the title Black Lives Matter, because it brings black people into things that, like in other words, it makes a mockery of what the statement Black Lives Matter is actually about. And so now everything is everything white people don't like is Black Lives Matter. And now the phrase, right, that should be a positive phrase is now muddied with, the organization that's really not about black lives, but about LGBT, and then is further muddied by the white people who want to, obviously inappropriately use the term to try to, throw further slander on the organization. It's one man, one woman, the one with the gun that has clearly a female. What the fuck is that? If you don't execute them, why waste our tax money? Tax TEX. I'm hoping he spelled that way intentionally. Probably happened there before. That explains the cameras. Exactly. It's again, I'm telling you, man, these white folks, they come into Philadelphia and they gentrify an area and they just completely ignore the fact that you're only 2 blocks away from the hood. Anytime, this sounds like it's going to be a logical statement. Anytime another race does something to the black person, they say it's racist. When a black person does something to another race, there is no such mention of race. Again, so I was wrong. A stupid comment. Why no mention of suspects' race? Because you can see their race in the fucking video. Where's this at? My heart. Arming the rocket launcher. Please wait a moment. Are we sure it was not the cops who did it? It was a stupid question. Joggers murdered a lawn chair. Lawn chair 6. I don't know. I don't get this lawn chair joke. All lives. Then here's the guy, Southern Rebel with the Confederate flag. All lives matter. White lives matter. And then here's another person, and this isn't even a white person because his name is Jasif, JASAFTAMRACKU, Jasif Tamarchuk. I don't even know how to say that shit. Anyway, they don't matter to black people as we see, right? So I guess when Putin invaded Crimea, I guess white lives didn't matter, right? Or I guess white lives mattered, right? But they didn't matter, right? Europeans slaughtering the hell out of each other way before they left Europe. But nobody calls that white on white violence. Nobody calls the Civil War white on white violence. Nobody calls what happened at the Capitol white on white violence. Nobody calls the World War One white on white violence. Nobody calls World War Two white on white violence. Nobody calls the Napoleonic Wars white on white violence. Nobody calls the Boers versus the freaking Afrikaners and shit. Nobody calls that white on white violence in South Africa. I mean, history is plagued with white on white violence. But black people's situation in America is a very unique situation where they're still in the land of their former oppressor and still put into shit, socioeconomic, conditions where they lash out at each other. That's typically what a powerless people are going to do in a situation like that. Again, white people have done all the psychology and they've written all the books and all that shit. They've done all that shit. But yet somehow, magically, it doesn't apply to black people. Oh, the niggers, they're just like that. The black, they're just no explanation. They're just like that. You see? Anyway, it's just irritating. Irritating. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out.